this going to become a weekly thing now?
I think it's going to be. We were actually live.
Is it going to become a weekly thing?
You didn't play the intro? I was waiting for the intro to play. I was going to uke behind the intro privately.
Oh.
That was private uking.
Okay. Sorry. Well, I'll roll the intro then.
Listen, I've never had any problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way. Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do. I respect the history, I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. It's uncut, it's unfiltered, this is the show of shows. The biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing. Prove me wrong, I'll wait.
Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, June 26, 2024. Hope you guys are doing well. Wild weekend in the sport of drag racing. I guess we should launch the show with at least addressing this massive happening in the sport. Over the weekend, a legend of ours here in the drag racing community, I would say inarguably the greatest of all time, John Force, involved in a terrifying high-speed accident following a catastrophic engine explosion that sent his funny car careening into the wall at 300 plus mile an hour. Wild deal. Reports here initially are pretty few and far between, but we do know that John is still in the intensive care unit at a Virginia area hospital. And I just want to, before we kind of dive into a lot of the conversation that exists around this situation, I do want to talk just about or express our sympathy and send our well wishes. The John Force Racing team, John himself, Brittany, the whole camp, Ashley, Courtney, his wife, they're all in our thoughts and prayers, man. That's a massive part of our sport. And I think it's in moments like these that we're reminded of the wide reach that exists in our sport. It's interesting. So frequently, I think we feel small. We feel like a community that's often overlooked. We feel like we're low on the motorsports totem pole, if you will. But it's in moments like this that I think I'm at least personally reminded the reach that some of the men and women in our sport have achieved. And John Force there is no greater name. There's no bigger name in the history of the sport of drag racing than that of John Force. And to see the widespread concern that exists, it's moments like these that you start hearing from people that you haven't heard from in eons going, hey, is John okay? I started getting texts from friends from high school that I hadn't talked to in years. And it's amazing to me the widespread mainstream reach and status that John Force has achieved in his illustrious career. And, you know, JT, we're down a man this weekend. Mike Carpenter out of pocket this weekend on family vacation. I think that's like, JT, you're probably keeping count. We need to add like a Mike's vacation counter, a Mike vacation counter up in the top right-hand corner.
I know he's always giving me shit. I'm like, what?
It's June 26th, and I believe the Carpenter family have spent, 47 days roughly so far here at the halfway point of 2024 on vacation, or the beach, as they like to call it. So, but anyways, we'll miss Mike this week because I know this is something that he would at least enjoy the opportunity to express his own concerns and share his thoughts and perspective on this whole deal. And we've got a lot to cover in a relatively short amount of time. JT, it's been a tough couple of days in the sport of drag racing. We also found out yesterday that longtime beloved drag racing photographer Roger Richards passed away. Roger, I don't know what it would take us the rest of the show to adequately describe the impact this man has had on the sport and just in this community specifically. He is a guy that was beloved, a warm, welcoming character. I wrote on Facebook that it never failed, no matter what was going on, whether it was raining, snowing, sleeting, hailing, or sun shining. Anytime you bumped into Roger Richards at the racetrack or he rolled up to you on his little scooter, he was happy to be there. And he just always reminded me of how blessed we are to spend our weekends at the drag races and spend our days.
He's always willing to help too. He's helped out a ton of photographers over the years.
Oh, innumerable. People have launched their careers on the back of guidance and encouragement from Roger Richards. So, anyways, our hearts go out to the Roger Richards, his family, his daughter Lisa, of course, his whole family at CompetitionPlus.com. He's been a part of the CompetitionPlus.com team for a decade and a half. So my heart goes out to Bobby Bennett and the whole team at Competition Plus, some dear friends of ours, and it's going to be those are shoes that will not soon be filled, my friend. But I do want to, we're going to bounce around here a lot. It's kind of the nature of the beast when you get on this show with me, and we'll talk about whatever pops into my head or yours. But we do need to talk about this John Force situation. What a tough deal. And it's been,
Yep.
I mean, what do you have any like immediate reaction? Because I don't know if you experienced what I have the last few days, but it is just insane, the outpouring of interest and real genuine concern that folks have for John Force.
Yes,
You're reminded of
everybody's
how
wanting
long
updates.
he's
Yep.
been here. But I do think that there's been some buzz around like, hey, we're not getting enough information. What's going on? And I actually watched the
You got to
Life's
give
a
them,
Drag
some
podcast.
space though, a little bit.
You
The
do.
family needs some space in times like these.
You really do. And it's just about being respectful of folks. I do understand that when you've reached a certain level of celebrity, that
Right.
there is an expectation of keeping your fan base in the loop. But I do think that what we're suffering from here a little bit is just we're so used to things coming so rapid fire. And any time we're forced to have to wait a minute or wait a couple days even,
That's very true as well.
very difficult, because we're in an era of like this microwave society where it's like, 30 seconds after it happens, I want a full breakdown of every imaginable detail. But it's like, that's
Right.
just
10 years ago, you'd have to wait for a paper to come out, a week later or something like that, or a magazine even, I mean,
it's crazy how
it's
quickly
nuts.
the expectations change. Right. And I
And
think
it's not,
right
it's
now,
not simple. It's not a simple answer, like the family may be in limbo as well. It's not just as easy as going in and getting diagnosed and okay, and here's what you need to do. I mean, you just never know what's going on. So
you don't. And I will tell you that, and this is a point that I wanted to make really early in the show, and I'm going to go on a bit of a diatribe here, but I think that if I can take anything away from this, and this is for the entire drag racing community, I know it's fun for folks to talk about how easy these cars are to drive nowadays. If I had $1 for every conversation that I've had about, the good old days and how it used to be, and anybody can drive them and blah, 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 everything's automatic, the drivers don't do anything. You see the rider decals, you see the Tim McCamus videos talking about eating Cheetos and drinking, a 32 ounce of Pepsi or whatever. Well, Coke Zero if it was me driving. But in minimizing, downplaying what's required by the men and women behind these cars. But it's in moments like these that I think the courage that is required to drive these cars is not being adequately talked about. I mean, it's not a storyline that is really referenced that often. I mean, we're so focused on talking about 300 miles an hour and header flames and 12,000 horsepower, and we kind of overlook the gargantuan balls that it takes to climb into one of these cars. I don't care what kind of gadgetry is inside one of these things. It is a massive undertaking mentally, emotionally, to hit that pedal and hold the pedal down. I mean, you know how many crew chiefs I've talked to, JT, over the years that have told me the biggest issue they had with their team, or I'll come by, check on how they're doing, or I'll give them a call and like, hey, what's the latest, greatest? What's keeping you guys up at night? You'd be blown away how many times I've had a crew chief or a tuner tell me, man, if we could get him to hold the throttle down, he's letting off the throttle at about 1,000 foot, and it's, and then, or he's, whenever the car shifts into second gear, he's letting off the throttle. I mean, you'd be blown away how many people really struggle to hold the pedal down.
absolutely.
Right. And that's, I think people really overlook that. Like in all the talk of simplicity and all the talk of technology and driving cars in a straight line, we massively undervalue or underappreciate the sheer courage that is required to drive these cars. And it's not just a 3-second, 340 mile an hour drag car that'll get you hurt. I mean, we've seen people in 10, 11 second quarter mile cars, lose their lives, in situations such as these. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about more frequently, not to scare people away, but to embolden our drivers and like make heroes out of these men and women. I mean, I think about the fact that Brittany Force watched her dad go through what has been seen millions of times by now on YouTube. An insane crash where virtually no speed was scrubbed off, and that familiar peak antifreeze blue and white Chevy Camaro slams into the wall at 300 plus miles an hour. Car, it's been a while since I've seen one that violent. I mean, that was a bad crash. But to think about the mental fortitude and the emotional maturity that it has to be had by Brittany Force to then climb in her car and continue to do battle of her own, to see Austin
the whole team, Austin
climb into his car and win the race.
Because he was very emotional.
The YouTube
very emotional.
videos talking about how badass those guys are. We're all quick to call them pansies, or they drive dragsters, or those cars have so much technology on them, anybody could drive them, a monkey could do it, blah, blah, blah. I've heard it, right? Whoever's got the biggest checkbook. Bullshit. I mean, it is as much or more so than anything else about insane levels of courage.
You could say anybody on the property, really. I was watching NHRA TV, and it shifted. The mood shifted. The biggest name in drag racing. It's hard for him. Austin Prock was very emotional when they interviewed him.
Matt Hagan and
yes.
John Force have had a pretty celebrated rivalry. I mean, I think it's in good. I mean, it's in.
Oh yeah, I mean they respect each other though.
They respect each other, and to see Matt, this hulking human being, I mean, even he was pretty choked up about the whole situation. And you see a living legend like that, and I just think that at times we've done our sport a disservice by not talking enough about the bravery that is consistently exhibited by the men and women that climb behind the wheel of these cars. And that's why, and maybe I'm looking at the sport through rose-colored glasses, but you know what? I'm going to keep them on, because that's how I want to look at the men and women that make up our sport. That's how I see them, as heroes, as rock stars, as certified badasses. And I get a little chippy and pissed off when I see people make light of it, or, how it used to be. And yeah, the cars didn't used to go 340 miles an hour in 3.5 seconds, bro. Like, we've got really, I mean, think about how fast an X275 car is. I grew up in an era where a low 4-second door car was like a pro mod, was like a really, really crazy fast car. Now everybody runs 3s in the 8th mile. Everybody. Like, it's unbelievable to me. No prep cars run 3s in the 8th mile at 200 plus. I mean, that is a speed that will get you hurt. And it takes some real balls and some real talent and some real skill to climb in behind the wheel of one of those cars and make all the right decisions in the face of that reality. That at any moment,
I think that's exactly what it does when something like that happens. It's a stark reminder of what could happen, and
it is.
I think that you run long enough, you're going to get complacent a little bit, and when something like that happens, I mean, everybody on the property is like, "Oh shit, man, it can happen," and then it really takes some balls to climb back in there.
Absolutely. I mean, and Leah Milliken put in the comments that Brittany Force's response when asked about, her thoughts about going right back into battle and climbing behind the wheel of her top fuel dragster. I wouldn't be John Force's daughter if I didn't climb back in this thing and win. And I was actually spending some time on YouTube this morning, and like this, I got to say, I went back and watched a couple of videos that NHRA had about various incidents of John Force's over the years, going back to like 1990. And I mean, he's had some rough ones. There was several big fireballs in the 90s, big explosions. 1992, when he saw Elvis at 1,000 foot, an iconic John Force quote, car burst into flames, gets into the wall, spins around backwards, body comes off and goes tumbling into the dirt. But 2007, his Dallas incident with Kenny Bernstein, where the tire exploded, the car veered across the track into Kenny Bernstein's lane. They get together. The car was ripped in half. John was, taken by air ambulance to a local hospital, Baylor. Anyways, we've seen him in some really situations that I think would be easy to describe as career enders, like a reason to walk away, especially if you factor in his age. And I started to kind of reflect on the fact that this man is still doing this, and he's still doing it at a really high level. I mean, he was having a fantastic 2024, and it's incredible to me, the courage the man has. It really is. And his willingness to just keep after it, because he's had, whether it was incidents such as this, big explosions or crashes or whatever, he's also had plenty of like performance related issues or financial issues where sponsors go away, or a sponsor comes and a sponsor goes, whatever. He's had plenty of excuses, plenty of opportunities to bail, ride off into the sunset or fully embrace his role as a team owner. But the fact that I just have an infinite amount of respect for him. If there's anybody that can bounce back from something like this, it's John Force. And again, man, I'm humbled to know the guy, and I'm in awe of the courage of so many of these men and women, and especially, the ones that forged forward this past weekend at the PlayNHRA Virginia Nationals at Virginia Motorsports Park, because it was a terrifying weekend heat-wise. I mean, you have, like heat warnings, the track's putting out notices to remember to drink water. I mean, it was a really rough weekend weather-wise. So you factor that in with a tragedy such as this, and you're right. I saw the same thing you did. It was like a light switch that was flipped. The mood dramatically shifted. But to see everybody continue, there was about to be a fantastic pun, but forge forward there and, continue out of respect. It wasn't a moment of tribute or a moment of honor. This is respect for the craft and respect for the danger of this. And Bob Tasca actually said something that I thought was really impactful in the shutdown there, the really unique and like quiet shutdown area at Virginia. It feels like you're 10,000 miles away from like any civilization down there on the big end. But Bob Tasca, he riffed and reflected on the inherent danger of what we do. Like this stuff's cool. It's amazing. It's a marvel of modern technology and machinery. But the fact remains, these things they're very, very dangerous, and they will hurt you in a hurry. And I just want to tip my cap and give flowers to everybody that climbs into these cars each weekend. I mean, it's said so frequently that perhaps it loses its luster. It doesn't have the oomph behind it that it maybe should. But like, everybody straps into these cars each weekend, and every Thursday nights, Friday nights, the local test and tune, what have you, well knowing that could be the outcome. Sure, everything could go fantastic, and that's what you want. You don't want to have to be a wheelman. You don't want to have to be a driver, but it happens fairly frequently.
It happens. Yeah.
These things, this is not a once a year occurrence where we see an engine explosion. This is not a complete rarity in our space. Matter of fact, it happens fairly frequently. So it's an incredible thing that these men and women at every level, and I just have a lot of respect for it. And I respect the craft. I respect the courage. And it just makes it shocks me, to be honest, when I go to the racetrack every weekend and see how many super talented, courageous young men, women, and men of every age, and women of every age and race, creed, color. Like, it's incredible what this community brings out and what this sport brings out in people. So anyways, man, it's a wild weekend. It really was. I know there's been a lot of scuttlebutt about, I don't want to start speculation, and I think it's too soon. JT, I actually shared with you that I did some research this morning because I wanted to see how some other sports had handled situations such as this. And I thought an easy example that I could find quickly and was relatively recent was Ryan Newman's crash at the Daytona 500 in 2000. Happened on Monday night, February 17th. And I wanted to remind folks that, NASCAR in a lot of ways sets the standards for how these things are handled and protocols. And, obviously everybody's got things they could have handled differently or whatever, but they have, if you look no further than the NHRA playoff system, which is something we adopted from NASCAR, they're clearly somebody whose steps we follow in fairly frequently. I don't want to argue here today whether that's good or bad, but I do want to say that I find it interesting that it was about 5 days before NASCAR put out any sort of any sort of statement as far as like what happened or their initial findings. A preliminary report was all I was able to find. I worked on this for a couple of hours this morning, and it looked like the accident happened on Monday, February 17th. That evening, Ryan Newman was taken to the hospital. It was February 22nd, the Saturday, 5 days later, before NASCAR put out their preliminary report about what happened and the response from their safety team. And it was actually another 70 days. It was 74 days after the incident, nearly 3 months after the incident, before NASCAR put out a full report. So I do think we're probably going back to what we were talking about earlier, JT. We want things to happen so fast, because even I have reached out to many people on the NHRA tech team. I've reached out to a variety of different sources trying to, drill down on what we think happened here, because this is something that I saw discussed a lot on social media. Perhaps we can provide some clarity on certain amounts of it. Yes, these cars are equipped with an electronic safety system that is designed to deploy the parachutes in situations such as these. A crankcase pressure sensor sees massive spike, deploys the parachutes. Anything, there's multiple triggers on the car. There's an RFID device beyond the finish line that will deploy the parachutes if the car gets down there beyond without them deploying. A lot of different ways for this safety system to trigger. There's no, the only thing that I can figure is some sort of airline was disrupted. Something was destroyed in the initial explosion that caused the parachutes not to deploy. I do think it's something that's going to need to be investigated. I think that,
and I'm sure that's exactly what they're doing.
I'm sure that's exactly what they're doing. Again, I don't want to speculate. There was a lot of talk about pins being left in the parachute. I don't think that there was any human failure necessarily responsible for those chutes not deploying at all. Personally, I mean, I've looked at a lot of different footage, a lot of different photos. I don't have any reason to believe that to be the case. I feel that there was perhaps a disruption to that system, something broken, a line broken, ripped off the body. I mean, a concussion like that, I don't really know that you can rule anything out necessarily, but I do think it's going to, I mean, I think it's our duty and our responsibility as members of the racing community to find a way to learn from these things, to find a way to improve from these things and be better moving forward. That report that I talked about that NASCAR put out about 74 days after Ryan Newman's incident, it outlined 10 changes that were being made to the race cars and the rule book in light of that situation. So I do think that the NHRA is going to take their time to really get a firm grasp on what happened, the order of events, what went right, what went wrong. I don't know that anybody should ever be satisfied with the way something like this goes. We talk about the inherent danger, all those things, but at the same time, I do think that we owe it to the community, we owe it to our racers to look at these things through a magnifying glass and find ways that we could have done it better, that the response could have been different. There's always going to be a way to improve. And I do think it's going to create
That's how
some
we've gotten to the point that
conversation.
we've gotten to is
100%.
basically, yep. When something bad happens, you take a look at it and you improve on it. I mean, I hate that it has to go that way, but over the years, that's how safety equipment came as far as it has.
I mean, and you hate that, but I mean, they say that, every line of the rule book's written in blood, and there's a lot of truth to that, right? I mean,
There's a lot of truth to that.
Those things we learn, we want to feel like there's a way to improve. I'm sure that there's probably a mad scientist, maybe a young man or woman that's sitting at home right now, not able to sleep because they want to figure out the way to prevent something like that happening or find a different way to deploy those parachutes. I'm of the opinion that we're not far away from some closed circuit, like self-contained system that's not reliant on any of the systems that exist on the car, like not reliant on the car's air bottle. It's got its own system. It's either electrical, it's done differently, because these are the situations that we've seen happen where we want those parachutes being deployed, like we want those chutes coming out, and it's incredible how often they come out inadvertently or when you don't want them to come out. But in a situation like that could have been very beneficial, in my humble opinion, they don't. So I do think that it's going to be interesting, what comes. I'm anxious to see what the 10 things that we'll see from NHRA will be about how we can address these things moving forward, because a incapacitated driver following a massive engine explosion, I mean, that's the reason we're racing 1,000 foot in many ways. I mean, there's been many changes made to our sport on the back of that type of situation and the very scary consequences of a situation like that. But I do think we got to give everybody a little bit of time. I did reach out to the NHRA this morning because I just want to know, and this is my own, like, just curiosity, but I reached out and in a respectful way just asked, like, what kind of communication has been going on between the NHRA, specifically its executive team, and John Force Racing and the team and the family. And I was assured that the NHRA executives had been in regular communication with the family, with John Force Racing, and that sat well with me. I think that NHRA is frequently labeled as somewhat impersonal, maybe don't have the relationship with racers that some more so than others, whatever. But I thought if there was an opportunity here to highlight a great thing the NHRA executive team was doing and staying actively involved in this and making sure that their presence was felt and that, it was the team felt that they cared and felt that they were invested, and it made me feel good. So I appreciate the NHRA being candid with me and telling me that they had actually been in regular communication with the Force family. And our team here has reached out. We've done our level best, but we're also trying to be respectful. I was glad to get an update earlier this week that, albeit, not as much information I think as anybody is waiting wants, because I will tell you again, my mom's blowing me up, my dad, like my father-in-law, like friends from high school, people that I don't normally talk to about this stuff, all want to know if John Force is okay. And it's, again, a good example of the reach this guy has and the impact that he's made on folks, hardcore drag racing folks and not. Right. So it's an incredible thing, man. But here's hoping that we give this some time. We'll get some answers. We'll find out more. And if the good Lord's willing, we'll see John Force strap in behind that nitro supercharged Hemi once again, man. What a deal, dude. It's a tough reminder of how serious this business is, AT.
It is.
It's
and I was moving on for the John Force team. I mean, I'm sure they're going to try to field the car this weekend. I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm anxious.
He has had a good year.
He has had a good year. I've had multiple people make mention of me the COVID rule, which allows another driver to fill in the car continue to earn points for the driver, essentially. So I personally don't know that anybody, I understand, and perhaps I am downplaying the competitive nature that exists out here. I guess I just immediately go into like, who cares? Let's make sure this guy's okay, and we'll worry about. But I understand the business continues. I understand sponsor obligations continue. So I wouldn't be surprised. I have heard rumblings that there's a couple of drivers being thrown around, one in specific that's going to be getting some laps behind the wheel of that peak antifreeze nitro funny car in the coming days and weeks to prepare perhaps for a debut on the NHRA Western swing. But I personally, my attention's like 100% focused on, I don't, you know what, if this were to open the door for somebody, that maybe that's a silver lining that could be found here. But I really just want to see, this is not the way you want to see the greatest of all time go out. And this is the risk you run by staying out here for as long as he has. I mean, you see it frequently, guys, that there's this opportunity perhaps to go out on top, but they continue to fight the good fight. And then you find yourself wondering if this is going to be the last time we see the man in competition. But I hope that's not the case. I've got to,
even if so, he still was running good, this year. So,
no doubt.
I mean, so even if so, I mean, he still kind of goes out on top.
Yeah, man. There's a couple of questions here, and I'd actually like you to write them down, JT. Brian Lostness has a fantastic one. There's also a question from Stan Waxberg that I think are worth mentioning a little later in the show, being that we're down a guy today. We've allocated some time at the end of the show to do a Q&A, a good old-fashioned Q&A. Nothing I love more than answering questions about drag racing. So we'll dive into a few of these things. But before we do, I want to take a second to remind you that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by way of our friends at Redline Synthetic Oil. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any on the market, and they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about Redline. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. Fresh off a huge win at the PlayNHRA Virginia Nationals at Virginia Motorsports Park, the house that our buddies Judy and Tommy Franklin, along with Tyler Crossnow, have turned into one of the premier facilities in the sport of drag racing. The one, the only Elite Motorsports 00 lever. Oh my goodness, Aaron Stanfield, what's up, boss? You're doing a little bit of a media tour today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
No, man, we're glad to have you. First off, congrats. I just want to talk. We talked about the emotion and everything that goes into this. It was a little bit of a new experience for you, winning with your wife and daughter. I know you're a new father, and I was just curious. Could you give us how much has becoming a father, even getting married before that, had on you as a driver? Has it changed the way you do anything or the way you look at these things now that you have the responsibility of being a husband, a provider, and a father and a provider? Does that because it's something that, in my opinion, and this I said this a moment ago, whether it's Top Fuel or Top Junior Dragster in PDRA, there's a risk here, right? And the faster the cars get, for sure, the greater the risk. But it's not like you're doing something that's routine, Aaron, driving a 6-second, 200-mile-per-hour door car with little to no downforce. I mean, we've seen some really scary incidents. Has being a father reframed how you look at this whole deal?
There's definitely a couple points of view I have at it, but I mean, for sure, it's easy to. I think we saw it this weekend with John Force, and prayers go out to his family. But it's easy to think that you're safe and exempt from something like that happening. But these are dangerous cars we're driving, and bad things can happen. So our teams and the chassis builders and everybody involved, including NHRA, try to make these cars as safe as possible to drive. So yeah, maybe I'm still young enough that it doesn't bother me too bad just yet, but it definitely goes through my mind. You know, I don't want something bad to happen to me and you know, leave my kids with that. But on the same breath as drag racing's how I make my living. So yeah, it puts a little bit of pressure on me to perform. So I think it works for me in a good way. It seems like both times I've got two kids, Oakley and Rowdy, and around the times I've had both kids, I've won a race. And I don't know if that has something to do with it, but I definitely felt a little added extra pressure this weekend with Oakley there. She hasn't gotten to come to many pro stock races, so it was pretty dang special to win it with her there.
Oh man, it was just seeing the reaction in the winner's circle was like phenomenal to see. First win of 2024, a couple of final round appearances. Like I said in the intro, you double O'd your way to the win this weekend. What pro stock? We've got all sorts of storylines that exist in NHRA pro stock right now. Like the one that I think people love to talk about, the ongoing rivalry between Elite Motorsports and KB Titan. We had some driver changes this weekend. News broke that Sienna Wildgus was joining the Elite Motorsports camp. What can you say about the culture that exists at Elite Motorsports right now? Like, I totally respect the arguments that can be made against the two super teams, right? But I think, and I get that, and I don't want to discount anybody's opinion that wishes there were more team owners, all those things. I think those are valid points, no doubt. But the reality is that we've had two teams really foster the growth of pro stock over the course of the last, nearly a decade, and have driven the bus. And I've got a lot of like admiration and appreciation for Elite Motorsports and KB Titan for keeping pro stock vibrant. What do you make of just like the Elite Motorsports, the culture that exists there, where there's 8-9 teams at times being fielded on a weekend, and all of them being successful? I mean, obviously only one can win, but it's not like you have one car that performs and a half dozen that don't.
Yes, I mean, I think you see a lot of that across motorsports nowadays. Now, Elite's obviously one of the bigger teams, but I mean, it's a great atmosphere. I mean, it's very, very friendly, very family-like, but when we put the helmet on against each other, it's game on. Kelly Murphy on TJ's team, he goes, it's nothing personal, it's just business, and that's the truth. I mean, we each of our teams, we want to win, and when one of us goes out, we're right behind our teammates rooting them on. But congratulations to Tiana for making that move. I mean, in my mind, I would think to follow behind Erica and learn what she has to offer should be a huge advantage to her if this is the career she wants to pursue. So I think I think it's a great move. But between the two big teams, of course, it's just a little competitive competitiveness going on. And there's always stuff happening behind the scenes. I'm not much for too much trash talking, but I normally try to let the racetrack do that for me.
And you have done so in fine fashion, my friend. You've let those scoreboards and those time slips speak for you in many ways. I don't know, how old are you these days, Aaron?
29.
Jeez Louise, everybody's so damn young. Okay, well, I came up during a different era than you. Ship caliber pro stock team. I mean, what could you compare and contrast some of the experiences that you guys had racing as a family versus where you're at and what you're doing now?
So definitely different times, but yeah, I mean, I grew up right in the middle of it. So yeah, my dad built his own engines. Sometimes he might have to drive the rig or do the whole entire thing from the business to the crew chief and to the driving. So to see that, that's been, I mean, I've kind of followed in the same path. I might not build the pro stock engines, but I'm very, very familiar with, working on the cars and the business side of it. So yeah, it's just very different for me to be a higher driver, because when I get done, we got done with Virginia, and it's a mad dash to get home and get back to work here in the engine shop here in Bossier City. So yeah, it's different for me just to be a higher driver, but I think it's the perfect spot for me. Richard and all the Freemans and all the guys elite, they've been like family to me. I mean, I've known Richard for since the beginning of my racing, so it's a perfect fit, and I would never see it any other way than what we're doing right now. So
it looks, I mean, to be honest, man, I mean, if you think about it, and we have a lot of young racers. I'm actually rocking one of my 30 under 30 guys shirts. Logan, shout out to Logan Yelton. I'm wearing my Logan Built shirt, but we're big fans of drag racing's up and comers and the next generation of drivers. And it's something that we have really tried hard to get behind and support these young men and women that are chasing their drag racing dreams, whether it's being a pro driver or being a media member or being a crew member, wherever you get a manufacturer, a fabricator, we want to celebrate and encourage and validate the efforts of this next generation. I'm curious, like, for your perspective and seeing it through the lens of the do-it-yourselfer, do everything yourself, to what you're doing now. I mean, what do you make, like, what's the lay of the land for the young guy or gal that wants to make it in pro stock? Like, do you think the play is to, secure financing or go out and build that following on social or find the right guy that can support your dreams and help you get into a program like this? Or is the play to try to piecemeal a team together and go out and fight the good fight on your own? Or what's your kind of take on the pathway that exists for the up and coming pro driver in drag racing right now?
So I think, back when my dad was racing, it was actually much more expensive than what it is right now. And a lot of that has to do with, it wasn't big teams. It was a lot smaller teams. So I think it's a lot more, obviously there's still a lot to get that goes into a lot of money and a lot of resources, but I think it's a lot more achievable than it has been in the past. And that's been thanks to KB and Elite in doing what they've done with the class. But I think, you saw Camry Caruso, her kind of beginning of her career, she kind of got involved with Elite Motorsports and, got around the cars a little bit and got a little familiar with everything and kind of learned, about the class. And I think that would be, the same approach that I would take. And that's basically what I've done. I mean, of course, I was around it when I was a kid, but around the time I was 18 years old, my dad had pretty much sold everything in the engine shop. We had pretty much an empty building. So it's been a good fight to, piece everything back together in here. So, and I started in the sportsman ranks and, got lucky and had an opportunity to get my feet wet in pro stock and learn how to drive a car when I was 19. So I think, aligning yourself with the correct people is key. And, just focus on building your craft and learning the business. I mean, you're not just going to be able to hop, even if you have money, you're not just going to hop in a car and have success. You've got to learn about it. So,
go ahead.
I think if you look at Elite Motorsports and Stanfield Racing Engines as well, I think we both thrive on bringing youth into the sport, teaching the young guys how to work on these cars. I mean, if you look, there's a lot of young guys working on across all of those cars, and there's also some seasoned experience as well.
That's what I love seeing that. Like, that's one thing that I have noticed, and I feel like I'm seeing more of, is younger guys and gals getting an opportunity to be in a role on a team that's a difference maker, not just putting out the awning, but like having an opportunity to really contribute to the car's success. And I think that's meaningful, and it is a fantastic way. I think that that's one of the issues that we've seen in the sport of drag racing over the last really several years, is kind of a need for more young folks to come work on these cars. Manpower is an issue pretty much across the board. And I do feel like there's a lot of great opportunities for young people that have a mechanical knack or have some sort of trade school experience to dive into one of these teams, get in where you fit in initially, and you never know where it may lead. I mean, Robert Height is considered one of the best drivers in drag racing, especially in Nitro Funny Car, but I would say across the board. And he started out working on the car, and getting his, doing the left side cylinder head and doing the clutch and doing all these things that oftentimes are kind of seen as not so glamorous as being the driver, but it prepared him to be in a position, to get the nod or to get that phone call when the time came. And I think he's a better driver for it. So I do think that going and learning the ropes and having a hands-on knowledge of what's happening is really, really important. And just paying your dues to some extent. I think patience is a virtue, right? And it's something that seems to lack in this day and age across the board, is that like sometimes success takes a little while. Speaking of, though, we do see a lot of young people in the sport of drag racing, specifically in pro stock, that are having, success early on. I mean, I actually had this conversation with Scott Wildgust a couple of weeks ago. I said, I know people that went to their graves despite their best effort, having never qualified for a pro stock race, like trying really hard. So like, don't make light of being on that sheet above the line. Like just being that, for many, many people in this walk of life, qualifying for a pro stock race, like that's a lifetime achievement. But we've come to a time where people expect to win, and they don't expect to qualify once and find it. And that's obviously a competitive thing that exists in our sport, but it does take time, and you have to have some patience, because we've seen plenty of people with deep pockets and all the money in the world come into our sport and vanish pretty quickly because it didn't happen overnight.
Yeah, I've gotten to deal with. I've been very fortunate and had a lot of success, but I've also gotten my teeth kicked in a lot. So I've definitely had to pay some dues, and I think that's an important thing that you mentioned. Success doesn't come overnight, and it doesn't matter how much money you have behind you. It's about aligning yourself with the right people and honing in on your craft and perfecting what you can control. And that's really the approach that I've taken. I mean, now I have some really wonderful people behind me. Joe Janik, he really, put me in the position that I am to be able to represent somebody like JHG and Melling and Outlaw Beer and Skag and get to race with Elite. So it takes a lot of patience and a lot of hard work and a lot of money. And really, I raced when I was 19, but I didn't know I was going to get the opportunity to hop in a pro stock car again. It just kind of hit me out of nowhere.
What do you think? Like, one of the things that I was thinking about over the weekend watching on NHRA.TV was, y'all are going to have RJ, Rick Jones is going to have to fab up a wing to put on that son of a bitch to house all the logos. Like, there's a lot of brands on those hot rods. What do you make of that situation? I mean, you mentioned JHG, the Janix, Melling, Outlaw Beer, my buddy Mark. What do you make of the sponsor support that exists in that opportunity? I mean, where do you see that? Where does that come from? Is it the B2B opportunities that exist? Is it the access to this network of people, this community of people? Because it would appear to me that I know it's Richard Freeman, Pete Merkel, a bunch of different folks that are involved in this, Woody Woodruff, but the involvement of sponsors, I don't know that there's a team that has as many active partners in drag racing right now as Elite Motorsports. I mean, just tell us a little bit about that. I mean, having the opportunity to drive for Jason Johnson and Johnson's Horsepower Garage, like it's a pretty special thing, and it defies the logic that oftentimes is spewed in drag racing, that you've got to have a top fuel car to get it to sell a sponsor. I mean, we've seen people punt on whatever they were doing to pursue a top fuel deal or a funny car deal because they thought they had to race those categories to get sponsors. But I feel like some of the most successful teams aren't in Top Fuel or Funny Car. They're in these other walks of the motorsports life.
Yeah, definitely. I always say it, and everybody that knows Richard knows this. He can sell ice to an Eskimo, but he's taken a great approach to how we present these deals to our partners and sponsors. They, Skag and Outlaw Beer might not be directly, associated. They might not be majorly funding my car, but they're associated with our program. So, I've said this in the past. If I'm having a bad day, GHG's represented on all the cars. If Jaggy's having a bad day with Skag, it's represented on all of the cars. So to be able to have that, continued line of success for our partners and sponsors, I feel like it's a big advantage over most of the teams in drag racing right now. And I feel like that's a big part of why Richard's been able to snowball this pretty good.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, I saw the donate to Shriners on the front end of those Camaros this weekend. I'm excited about that partnership. And it seems like every time I turn around, y'all are announcing a new partner or a new sponsor. So it's a fantastic thing. Kind of couple of closing questions here, Aaron, and I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us on a Wednesday afternoon. But what they say you are the company you keep. And you keep some really incredible company at Elite Motorsports, in specifically talking about drivers. And I just was wondering if you could kind of share with us some of the wisdom that you've been able to glean, or just perhaps a couple examples of the impact that having those type of guys, Jeg Coughlin Jr., TJ Coughlin, Erica Enders, Jerry Don Tucker, and Royce Freeman himself, Richard Freeman, Mark Ingersoll, like the guys in this camp. And I'm completely excluding the entire Quadra team. Like, there's a lot of smart, accomplished people in there. What's it been like having that type of group around you, as a driver specifically?
I could definitely talk about that for a while, but we can kind of start out with the drivers here. I mean, TJ, Jaggy, Jerry Don, Erica, all the Quadras. I mean, we've got like a serious stable of drivers. I mean, and that's nobody ever, any competitive person, they never want to be the weakest link. And sometimes you are, and you rely on the people around you to help, give you the knowledge and the confidence to get out of that spot. But, like Jaggy, just watching some of the things he does and how he drives a course. I mean, he doesn't have to say much, and I can pick up a lot on it. And, having somebody like Erica on your side to have that, championship winning experience and just being able to lay it down every run under pressure, to be able to bounce ideas off of her head and, just to have a conversation about driving has been a big help to me. I also have my dad as well, involved with it, and he's groomed me all the way to this point. So, but for instance, like in Virginia, I was 003 in the semis, and I asked Erica for a little bit of advice of, what her opinion is of what we should do in this situation, and she gave me her honest opinion, and it played out in our favor. So that was really cool. And then you go over to the engine guys and the car guys working, crew chief in the cars. Mark Ingersoll, he just has an unbelievable amount of knowledge. So I might wear him out. I might wear all those guys out with questions, because I'm full.
I wear Mark out
regularly
if I show up.
Yeah.
So, he called me in the office one time.
Yeah, I wear Mark, Jake, and Kyle and Tim Freeman. They probably get tired of hearing me ask questions, but
they get way less tired of you than they do JT. I was there when JT got the Tarkin 2 from Mark Ingersoll, and hey, please don't take my guys out after the race
ever again.
Anymore.
Yeah,
please don't ever let them go with you ever again.
So give me something to do. Let me tune on something.
Yeah. Just what they need.
Yeah.
Just what they need.
I seen your crew has celebrated pretty hard.
Yes. Yeah. So Travis, our clutch guy, he's thought he's been a curse because, he's been racing for 3 years. He sees everybody, at least popping off a win or so, and he hadn't gotten his yet. So, and we have been to a final, a couple finals this year and haven't pulled it off. He thought he was cursed. So, It's like we said, the youth in the youth in the sport, and to see somebody as passionate as I am about winning, and even if they're not driving the car, that pushes me to be better. So I really love being around that. But yeah,
Travis is the shit. I like that. There's a whole great group of guys
the whole
over
crew,
there, man.
This is awesome. Yeah,
and,
no, and
Casey,
it's like
Casey
I love
always
seeing,
gives me some wonderful encouragement too.
Oh,
I bet.
Casey Freeman. I can imagine getting some encouragement from Casey, probably upside the head encouragement from that guy. But we're real quick before we cut you loose, brother. I'm just curious. We've seen your dad making waves in Factory X, and I'm just curious, like your perspective on that, being as successful as you've been in Factory Shootout, driving these small tire, no wheelie bar monsters. What do you make of that kind of evolution of the class? There was a lot of people that it seemed like the fan base was really excited about this class. It's obviously going to take some time to get more and more cars built, but we're seeing some interest. All the cars are badass, some tribute paint jobs. It's really cool. And to see, what is essentially a pro stock car with factory dimensions and little 10.5Ws on them. I mean, I know some people don't consider a 10.5W a small tire, but we pro stock pro mod guys sure do. But what do you make of that class, and what do you think for its future?
I think it's a great class. I mean, I feel like we still have improvements, between the racers and NHRA that we can make to make it better. And as we see some more cars come out and some more manufacturers involved in it, it's going to be really fun. I think the Factory Stock Showdown's been a great class to watch and be a part of. And my dad and I are really excited to be a part of it. Factory X, and I think it's a good way to try to keep some manufacturer involvement. I mean, you've got the Coyote engine, you've got the Hemi engine and the LS platform. So, I would say that's a big difference between that and Pro Stock is not many people know what a DRCE engine is. And, the hardcore engine guys do, but that was purposely designed to run Pro Stock. And the LS engine, something that, the average hot rod guy knows about. So I think it's a very relatable class, and I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And hopefully I can whoop up on my dad. He got me at the last one.
No, it's a cool thing to see, man, and I'm genuinely excited about it. Like whenever it first came about, like it was the first class, like new class in drag racing that I really felt like a groundswell of interest in. Like people are like legitimately excited about it, and it is different to see those cars on the track, especially when you're lucky enough to go to an NHRA national event and see them there at the same time and see what a pro stock car looks like and the level, the links to which have been gone to make the car more aerodynamic and everything else. And then you see one of these factory bodied Camaros roll out there and you're like, wow, people need to see that. Like that's a real Detroit made in America hot rod, and it's big difference.
How many times
man.
do you see that in the comments? Like
people love it, man. I mean,
don't look like cars. Like, well, we want to see cars. We want to see, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you see tons of comments about it.
Yeah. You see that a lot. And I think, I love Pro Stock, and I don't believe that Factory X is here to take over Pro Stock by any means. I believe it's here to be a class like Mountain Motor or Pro Mod or Factory Stock. It's here.
You should probably buy a Pro Mod as well.
I'd hop in one in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I'd
all right, let's make that happen. We need. Okay, you heard it here. We're gonna get Aaron Stanfield in a JHG sponsored Pro Mod.
Now that Travis isn't cursed anymore, too. I mean, this is all working out great. Yeah.
Well, when I had to talk to NHRA, they got to let me drive 3 cars in one race.
Okay. Well, we'll get there, man. But you don't got to worry about that. You come down in the off season, hang out with us in Florida, have some fun, and do this other stuff, during the regular season. But come down and run for big money. You got to strap into a Pro Mod, man. You got to get your certified badass card.
I'm a speed freak. Pro Stock's where my heart is, but man, there's Pro Mod's badass as well. And I'm sure one day I will get to hop in one.
Yep. February 27th, 2024.
That's the day.
That's the date. So stay tuned, brother. But hey, congratulations, man. Number 5 in the championship points. We've seen you in the thick of things all the way down to the bitter end, and we expect to see the same this year. It's great to see you in the winner's circle. Congrats to you, the whole team, the Janik family, the Freemans, Elite Motorsports, Johnson's Horsepower Garage, Nikki and Jason, everybody involved, man. It's we need Aaron Stanfield's winning drag races. So it's a great thing for our sport when we get to see your smiling face on Sunday afternoon, man. We appreciate you, buddy.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. Yep.
Thanks, Aaron. Talk soon. Hey, guys, I want to remind you that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by way of our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety, the world leader in 100% American-made safety equipment. Log on to stroudsafety.com today. Support the people that support us. Find folks right up the road in Oklahoma City. I need to get back up there here in the next couple of weeks and see Tommy and Anita. I haven't talked to Tommy in a little while. We got to get on the phone and see what he's up to. I actually was going to reach out to him this morning to talk about maybe how much speed he assumes the parachutes would have scrubbed off had they deployed even momentarily for John Force. I love little stats and factoids like that, JT. But hey, so let's keep going. We got a couple of questions. I want to do invite all you guys to participate in a couple 20 minutes or whatever of Q&A, good old fashioned Ask Wes session. I don't know what. Maybe they'll want to hear me do more private ukulele, which I'm happy to do.
I saw
if we want to do that.
Comments that said no.
Okay, no ukulele. Yep. Okay, son of a bitch. Okay, well, I was kind of gearing up, like getting my fingers warmed up for a jam session there, dude. But I saw one of the questions earlier
or something, right? Or some bongos.
Yeah. You're built for bongos. No offense or anything, but like
I am.
You're made for bongo playing. Yeah. No, boom, boom, boom. I could see you like sitting cross-legged. You can't say Indian style. It's like not politically correct. Crisscross.
You can't see me sitting cross-legged. Come on.
Yeah, I really can't.
Yeah, no.
How's quitting smoking going?
Pretty good, man. I mean, like 4 years, I think. But I mean, I haven't completely got rid of nicotine.
Really? Yeah, I'm able to kick it.
Oh my god.
We need to get us a sponsorship.
My desk is just full of shit. I swear to God, of like nicotine stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I know. Like, I need to kick it sometime, I guess.
Nah, you might as well lean into it. Now it's like the trendy thing to do. You know, it's like, you on nicotine? You on the teen?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You got any teen? No, it's unbelievable.
Give me miles I put on my own truck because I smoked, and and how many steps I took at hotels trying. Like JW Marriott, you had to take like 2 elevators to go outside and smoke a cigarette. It was awful, dude. I think JW Marriott's what made me quit.
I remember early on in the magazine back in like 05, 6, 7, 20, almost 20 years ago. Wyatt Halden, who was our main sales guy, God rest his soul, he passed away a couple years ago. But Wyatt, he would do most of his sales work at PRI and SEMA outside smoking. I mean, literally, he would always come in and reek of Marlboro Lights and be like, dude, I sold 3 full-page ads outside smoking. And I'm like, oh, well, go back out there. You know,
I met
like
Prince one time. Yeah, I mean, like I swear to God, you meet so many people when you're smoking. I used to tell you that all the time too, because you go outside and it's just you have something in common, and it's cold as hell, and you're whoa, it sure is cold out here. No shit, Sherlock. But then you hit up a conversation on it.
No, it's I see a question here from Brian Lostness earlier. Wes, should the sanctioning body look at ways of slowing the cars down for driver and spectator safety? I think I just don't know how much, you know what I mean? Because it's not like bad things can't happen at 250. It's not like bad things. I mean, we've seen terrifying crashes, cars going over the guard wall at 200 miles an hour or under 200 miles an hour in the 8th mile in some instances. Yeah. So I don't know that there is, that is a reality that exists in our sport. And I don't know what I do have some concerns about, going 350 or whatever. Like, I don't know how much further the envelope can be pushed safely. I think we're probably right around, but I also know I feel like I'm smart enough to know that I'm dumb and know that we could say that. And we were saying that a few years ago, and the cars keep getting faster. I mean, they shortened the racing distance by 320 feet, and we've exceeded the speeds that we were reaching with the additional 320 feet since 2008. So I mean, never say never. I don't know what the next. I have a hard time wrapping my head around the cars going much faster than they're currently going, but I really think it's going to be about making sure these electronic safety systems and this technology that we're leveraging, make sure that it works, and making sure that it because these are the same things. Like these devices.
They have been pretty safe. Like, I mean, with everything they have installed in them and the rules that are in place and shortening the track. I mean, for the most part, if you take the large sample of the sport, it's been pretty good.
Oh, I mean,
yeah.
I think our safety track record is pretty phenomenal, to be honest. Like considering the danger that we've spent quite a bit of time talking about here today, I'm very proud of our sports track record. I think we've had a lot of situations that you almost were certain were going to end poorly that did not. We've seen cars go off the end of track at 200 plus mile an hour, 250 mile an hour, and guys walk away. I've seen some incidents that I personally thought there was no chance that we're going to end well, and have been proven wrong multiple times. So I agree with you, dude. I think our track record as a sport is very solid, but I don't know what the answer is as far as like slowing the cars down. I don't know if that's necessarily. I don't know if that's a real option, to be honest, because our sport.
Because you got to look at. I mean, I hate to say it, but you got to look at it kind of like. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're out there
bull riding
to go fast.
It's bull riding.
That's what you're doing. Yeah. Football players play football. They know the dangers. I mean, when you strap into the car, you know the dangers. I mean, you're addicted to it. People go jump out of planes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
sometimes the parachute doesn't open. But
and there's just racers. There's a racers are line steppers, right? Like they toe up to the line and they start to inch their toes over the line, and it's just part of their DNA, and I don't know that there's any way to legislate that out of it, because I remember Don Prudhomme, I think it was, the Snake, said on the heels of the 1,000-foot announcement, which was something that was not well received by the fan base whatsoever, that the crew chiefs will just continue to shorten the fuse. Like if they're blowing up at 1,320 feet, they'll have them blowing up at 1,000 feet soon, and they'll have them, I don't know, they'll continue. Like if we go to 8th mile racing, I don't think it's going to completely nullify engine explosions or parts failures or the variety of things that can go wrong with these cars. I don't know that that's the case. And I also feel that, I mean, can an argument be made? David Hance, a dear friend of mine, a longtime drag racing promoter, the founder of the original Shakedown at E-Town in Englishtown, New Jersey, he said to me many times that he thinks all drag racing should be 8th mile. It would be uniform. It would be, the numbers would be relevant from one series to another, from one track to another. And all the tracks are able to run 8th mile. Like, I think that there is, I can see a case being made for that, but I also think that it's perhaps a little bit unrealistic to think that it's going to happen overnight. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see 8th mile racing be a uniform thing at some point in the future. I just don't think we're there yet. And I'm not sure what things would have to happen to make that a reality,
Right.
And Brian,
you're talking mostly about nitro, right? I mean, because
yeah, absolutely.
Just like pro mod. I mean, you guys keep changing the rules to slow everybody else down so that nitros can compete. So they're slow enough.
I mean, I do think, true, though. But an argument can be made that fast. I think that it has to be, the cars have to be fast enough to be special and to be exciting and be fun to watch. But I also don't know that, like, for your argument, my belief is that what we have with World Series of Pro Mod specifically, and we have some really exciting news coming this summer yet regarding the World Series of Pro Mod, but what I want with that is really great competition. And I feel that we have really great competition when the cars run between 3.6 seconds in the 8th mile and 3.65. I think that there's probably 200 high-level door cars on the planet Earth that can run that number right now, or in North America right now, that can run that number. And I think that to me is more exciting than letting one of them run 340 and nullify, what we have with them all bunched together.
I was just trying to get a rise out of you, really.
It worked. Yeah.
I know.
But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's, because I do think that there is probably a threshold where you can say, hey, the cars are running 330 plus miles an hour routinely. We need to keep them in this window and maybe establish a threshold that we're not trying to go beyond this, because the untrained eye, even the trained eye, can't tell a 395 in the 1,000-foot in Matt Hagen's funny car from a 4 flat. You can't tell. You know what I mean? And I think that, Tommy in the YouTube comments said the crowd went wild when Mark Mickey went a 359. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, I want to see someone step up and lay down a number just outside the bounds. But the situation that we have with World Series of Pro Mod is just not letting it get too far out of control, where you have one car that's running 354 or 352, one combination, and it's making it questionable to compete with these other combinations when you know that we've got to do something that is not necessarily one size fits all, but one size fits most. And that's what I'm passionate about. I mean, that's why I continually make the argument that, like, I understand we had, I can't remember who we had on the show last week, moving fast here, but we've talked about PDRA, Pro Nitrous, and Pro Boost operating as separate entities. I'm just not convinced that the answer is not to run those cars together. I mean, I've done the research, I've looked at it a lot, and it's not going to dramatically change the landscape. I mean, especially if you were to slow the Pro Boost cars down a little bit. And I understand that the cars are getting heavy, but within the confines of where we're at now, I do think there's a way. On. Yeah, the steadings. Yeah. And Kurt and Ethan both kind of made a case for running the cars separately. And I get it. I totally, it's not a valid point. Like, it's not mutually exclusive. Like, I totally believe that the cars can be successfully contested as separate entities. But I think the magic of Pro Mod, what this whole deal has been built on for years, is a variety of drivers, colorful characters competing in a variety of cars. And I think when the cars become hyper similar, where many of them could hardly be differentiated from another, it really puts the onus on the driver to be the character. Thus, the celebrity that Stevie Jackson and Lyle Barnett and Ricky Smith have achieved, right? It doesn't matter what car those guys drive, because they've kind of risen above, in the mainstream eye, if you will, above it. It doesn't really matter, because it's about them as drivers. But we also know that not a lot of the people that drive these cars have the media training, have the experience in front of the camera, have the experience on the record to be that big personality. And some of them don't have any desire to. That's another problem that exists in drag racing, is that when I look at what we see from Stevie Jackson and Lyle Barnett, Ricky Smith, those honest big reactions, the big opinions on things, the personality coming through, it's because this is all they do. We would be remiss not to talk about Ricky Smith. I'm surprised we haven't had it brought up. What a weekend for Ricky Smith. I knew in my heart that when the weather changed and when the rain rolled in and it got even more hot and humid, that he was going to be well positioned. And I'm telling you what, man, he is, I've stated it here. We talked about the GOAT in drag racing, John Force, to start the show, but I will tell you, the GOAT of door slammer drag racing, the greatest of all time when it comes to door slammer drag racing, would be, you'd be hard pressed not to pick Ricky Smith. Longevity, the fact that he's still out here doing it at a high level, winning races. I mean, we've seen him retire and unretire multiple different times, but I just can't. I love seeing Ricky Smith in the winner's circle. I love seeing how much it means to him. Everybody can bag on him for crying or whatever, but I love it. I'm a crier myself, and or I get choked up pretty quickly.
And two guys that talk a lot of smack on him, he put them on the trailer. So
I know, and it's like taking out Lyle Barnett in 018 in the final round, stuff that thing in there deep, goes 018 in the final round, bottom 570s. I mean, I had an off the record conversation with Lyle Barnett, and I don't know if he talked about this on the Shake and Bake show last night. I wasn't able to catch all of it. But they were planning on actually having John Force on their show yesterday.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
really derailed their plans. But not that matters. I was just saying, I'm sure they were super excited about having the GOAT on the show. But anyways, Lyle told me, he was, Wes, if you would have seen, I wish so badly the camera, my GoPro, was pointed the other direction so that it could have seen what Ricky did to me. He was, in all my years of drag racing, I've never had that happen. He said, I never even saw that Mustang until the last 300 feet. He goes, we got to 1,000 foot and he drove away from me. drove away from me. And you're talking about a guy driving the latest, greatest Proline powered,
Yeah.
Pro-charged Hemi, baddest shit on the block. Scott Tidwell, the team owner, nothing but the best. And here you've got the driver saying, this good old boy in a nitrous Mustang just drove away from me down there. And it just goes to show you that Ricky's got that combination figured out. And I do think if some guy, I don't know that you can't sleep on that nitrous combination. It's a hard way to race. You hear about it all the time, but I think the door's wide open. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we're going to see Mike Thielen. I think Mike Thielen had a real shot. The way things lied shook out this weekend, I think we could have seen a Ricky versus Thielen final. I talked to Mike earlier this week. He's doing some really cool stuff during the Western Swing. He's going to open up his FBO to like racers. Like he owns a helicopter school. He owns a liquor store, but he also owns the local FBO there near the racetrack. It's like 45 minutes away from the track. He
also stole one of my shirts one time.
And sends his photos regularly to remind us. But yeah, dude, what a year Ricky Smith's had. This is, I think, in many ways, he's sold a lot of equipment. I think he's actually got one of his cars for sale. So I do think that Ricky's looking to the future and looking to be a team owner and to look, to provide opportunities like the one he's provided for Mike Thielen in years to come. But it's great to see Ricky just continue to kick ass and take names. And it's great. We talked about this with Justin Elks a couple of weeks ago, but it really feels like the NHRA Pro Mod series, the Congruity NHRA Pro Mod drag racing series has come full circle since those initial struggles that happened in and around COVID and some of the car count issues they had. 25 cars in Virginia. You're out there in a door car centric part of the country, but those were NHRA cars. There wasn't, a bunch of local guys that came out and supported it necessarily and bolstered the numbers. These are a lot of touring pros, and it was a fantastic weekend for NHRA Pro Mod, in my opinion. Just another.
I heard they're
great
going to put weight on Ricky too, right? That's what I heard.
I heard there's some rules. What's going on right now? But it's interesting. There is scuttlebutt about that. And if anybody watching in the audience wants to know about this, I find this kind of interesting. But there's some high-tech transmission stuff that's going on. Longtime supporter of ours, Mark Mickey and the gang up at M&M Transmission in Jefferson City. They never rest. Those guys are always looking for a way to go faster, to be more consistent, to be more reliable. I'm heard there's some rules coming about in the coming days or weeks in regards to some of the transmission technology that's being leveraged by some of these teams. I'm anxious to see how that unfolds. It's always exciting times in Pro Mod when there's a rule change or a rule amendment. So I'm sure we'll see some diatribes on social media this week. Don't you love that, T? Whenever like the old NHRAracer.com gets screenshot and put up on the website and all the red lines through the weights or whatever, the reduction. But no, it's going to be interesting. I just really like
Ricky's reaction when something like that happens.
You and me both,
that's
man.
The best. Yeah.
I saw another question here, and this is something that we need to talk about. It was talking about where's this at?
Oh, but before we move on, Flo and Vic agreed to a extension on their contract.
Oh, yeah. That was big scuttlebutt that's been going on for like the last 6 months. Nice to hear about that. We've got some news that we will be participating in along those same lines in the coming weeks. So really excited to see the U.S. Street Nationals and the Snowbird Outlaw Nationals continue to be streamed by our friends at Flow Racing. That's big news, man. It's Yeah, it's exciting. I saw a question earlier from Kimmy. Split the classes, more trophy, equal insurance. Racers love to race.
My thing on that class is just that I like to showcase one class, like the main class, basically. When you split it up, Pro Boost and Pro Nitrous, I want to see one headliner, one main event.
Yeah, man. I think it's like when you get the band
that's
together.
Me though. Yeah.
Like for me, from a promotional perspective and like my vision for the future with Pro Modified specifically is that I really think that it's imperative that anywhere these cars are raced, they're raced under similar rules and they're raced together. I think we have a unique opportunity to have stars of a lot of different shapes and sizes, a lot of different characters, a lot of different personalities, compete against one another on a level playing field in a variety of different hot rods. I think that we're leaving some meat on the bone. We're leaving some promotional value on the table by not embracing that, because your example of like splitting it up is what's the main attraction? What's the marquee event here? Like that exists in Top Fuel and Funny Car. And it's part of the reason they rotate who runs last.
And
right?
fans would even, that you could pick your power adder basically. I mean, there's fans of nitrous, you're a huge fan of nitrous, Pro Charger, blown.
It adds, it's a tool to be used.
So then it creates more rivalries.
Dude, it's no different. I use these examples a lot, but it reminds me of the early days of mixed martial arts, where you had a sumo wrestler fighting a boxer, then a boxer fighting a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I think that it gives you something to latch onto. Like, we talk a lot about enriching the fan experience, and that is where the opportunity exists in Pro Modified, because at a point in time when, let's be honest, maybe we don't have as many big personalities they're out there, but like at the forefront of our sport, we don't have as many big personalities as we perhaps need, right? I mean, I think the example of what we're experiencing with John Force and this massive outpouring of support and all this concern, like, I think that is fairly unique to John Force. Like, we've seen some really bad crashes over the course of the last, however many years, 20 years here at Drag Illustrated. But I don't know that I've ever seen this kind of concern, and it's because John Force is John Force. So my point is, if you have something that will allow people to find a way to be invested that's beyond the person driving the car, like maybe they're just a nitrous guy, or their dad had to put a nitrous plate kit on their street car when he was growing up. Like, if you have, or maybe you've got a late model performance car that's got turbos on it, so you want to cheer on Mark Mickey, or you were excited when Lyle Barnett switched to turbos there for half of a season. Like, you've got to give people, find a way, as many ways as you can, to get a hook in people. And I really think that that's what's being left on the table. I think I liken it to a music festival, right? Where you've got Motley Crue is headlining the hair band festival, right? And you're going to have the singer perform by himself and then the band perform by themselves. Like, the magic happens when they play together, bro. Like, we want to see the whole thing. And I do think it's like a distilled version. Like, Pro Mod to me is forever going to be about this mix, this cornucopia of different stuff, all racing under the same rules on the same racetrack at the same time. And I would be surprised if the NHRA doesn't further embrace Pro Mod in the coming years. I think that they've seen that there's opportunity here. I think the following that in the ticket sales and the viewership numbers that happen for events like World Series of Pro Mod, that happen for events like Lights Out, that happen for events like the import versus domestic World Cup finals.
Oh, look at that. Pro Nitrous is boxers in UFC.
It's, you know what? I think that's actually perhaps so. But I mean, here's the thing, man. Like, it's exciting to see a boxer climb in there with a jiu-jitsu guy or someone that's a really well-rounded dude and knock him the fuck out. Like, that's a cheering moment, and I think sometimes we get a little lost in trying to, what's like the easiest thing for racers, which sometimes they're the same, but sometimes we have to steer this group of people, right? And like, remove ourselves from the competition aspect and go, what's good for the sport? What's good for growing this thing, continuing to grow over time? And some of those things may not be, they may not always be welcomed, where you may have some guys go, you know what, if I've got to run against blower cars, I'm not going to race. And you know what, you may lose a couple guys. But I think that that's like a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain, because what the magic happens, and we've seen it time and time and time again, and we've talked about it being cyclical. Like, there may be a time in the future when we've got to separate them, and there may be a time in the future when nitrous cars aren't competitive at all. I would hate to see that happen, but I recognize it as a possibility. But I think we need to encourage it and give those guys and gals that run those cars that maybe are the less favorable combination as many reasons and as many opportunities to be successful as humanly possible, and to keep the whole thing healthy over time, especially like in these moments where it's not like explosive growth necessarily, but it's still growing. Like, Pro Mod, there are more cars being built to run Pro Mod top sportsmen than any other class in drag racing. I would bet everything I have on that. If you call, I talk to these guys routinely, but you don't have to spend any more than 5 minutes on Facebook. Go to Rick Jones' Facebook page, go to Jerry Bickle's Facebook page, go to any of these chassis shops' Facebook page, and you're going to see the new C7 Corvette Pro Mod that RJ just built for so-and-so, or the new 69 Camaro that, Jerry Bickle just built for Jason Scruggs, whatever. I mean, it's constant. Those are the cars that are coming out of paint shops. And I just think that their impact on our sport can't be overlooked. I mean, all of them, after a couple of years of racing at the highest levels, end up in a quick 8 or end up in a top sportsman class, end up in comp eliminator, whatever the case may be. And it has significant impact on our sport. And I don't know why we wouldn't lean into our strengths, even if it's a little uncomfortable at times, right? Or it makes some people make some tough decisions. But for me, Pro Mod, like I said, with the showing that Pro Mod is having in 2024 in the NHRA specifically, really strong car count, really great racing, minimal dramatics. The cars are repeating. You're not seeing some of the drive it like you stole it stuff that you saw in the early days of NHRA Pro Mod, or guys that were in a little over their head out there. You've got a really quality group of teams, a quality group of cars, some really great drivers. And I wouldn't be surprised. I think that we are a few years away. This is a bit of a bold statement or a bold prediction, but I would be shocked. And there are people that would say this is an absolute insane notion. I wouldn't be surprised to see Pro Modified as part of the Mission Foods NHRA.
It needs to be.
I would not be surprised to see that happen in the coming years.
It does. It needs to be.
There are many arguments. I've talked to many people smarter than me that have said it'll never happen. The NHRA will never, ever, ever introduce a new quote unquote professional category for fear of a pro stock truck situation. For the people in the audience that aren't familiar,
I think Pro Mod's well enough established. They don't have to worry about that.
I agree. And I think that they could look at the pro stock truck debacle, mishandled, poorly handled, but I don't know that you can really compare it to Pro Modified.
You can't.
That was like a moment in time, an opportunistic driven decision. And I just don't, I really would say if you
that
look
could
at
be
the
compared
car counts,
more to like Factory X or something. I mean, you could compare that more to that than, really? I mean,
yeah. That, I think that's true. I think if you had, great example. Holy shit, JT. That's like probably your best drag racing analogy ever. But like, if you looked at the Factory X, perfect example, if they made Factory X a pro category in the Mission Foods series and did it for a year or two and then shit canned it, I do think they'd find themselves in hot water with a whole bunch of racers and team owners that spent millions and millions of dollars building cars to run that class, only to find out that it didn't exist anymore.
Right. But in Pro Mod, these cars are already out there.
These cars are already out there in mass, right? In mass. So I do think that there is a play to, and you've seen NHRA start to dabble with it when they reduced the number of NHRA Pro Stock races from 22, 24 to 18. You saw them kind of alternate. Some races would have Pro Stock, some races would have Mountain Motor Pro Stock. That's what they're doing right now. Some races would have all the classes, like Gainesville, the Gator Nationals. You'd have the whole offering, but other events would have a small sampling, like they would just have Pro Mod and bike or whatever the case may be. And I see Spencer Hyde in the comments here, Pro Mod and Pro Stock bike could each do 11 races and alternate as part of the pro show. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. I mean, I'm just saying, I think the point has been proven that Pro Mod is the shit. It's where it's at. I mean, there is more action in Pro Mod right now than any other class in drag racing. There's more new interest, more fresh eyeballs on that type of drag racing than anything else. I would argue that it's the highest level of grassroots drag racing. It still speaks to your tried and true drag racing demo, but it also has an appeal to people that just have a passing interest in the automotive industry or a passing interest in cars. They look like Hot Wheels, for God's sake. I mean, you can't ask for much more. And with the car counts that NHRA has had in 24, I mean, they had 25 cars in Virginia. They had a hell of a show at Epping. These Pro Mod guys have proven that they'll travel. They'll go to Phoenix. They'll go to Vegas. They'll go to Texas. They'll go to New Hampshire. They'll crisscross the country. And I think in the very near future, I would not at all be surprised to see that happen. To see,
I hope it does.
Pro Mod be woven. I think that they'll probably have to run a few more races.
I thought last year we might be on our way to doing it. They kind of flirted with it. It seemed like, like bringing him up on stage and letting him ride back with everybody. I was like, oh, maybe we're going to see a tide turn here.
I think we're seeing it. I really do. And I would be, honestly, I'd be more surprised than not if it doesn't happen in the relatively near future. I'm not saying it's happening in 25, but I think it'll probably in some way, shape, or form. Well, historically, it's come down to money. It's always been a money thing. NHRA would always bring up that it costs this much money and the purse and the points fund and blah, 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 blah. But I think the class has enough sponsorship support right now that if it was woven into the Missions Food Drag Racing Series, I think it's there. And I think that it would actually be worth investing. I know that that's what I've had to do at various times in my business is I've had to invest. I've had to take a chance, and I've had to stick my neck out and hope for the best. And I think that the NHRA may find themselves in a position where it would make sense to invest some amount of money in ushering in this new era of Pro Modified, where this is a marquee attraction. Because again, I just go back to car count. If I'm a track owner and I'm having an NHRA national event and I've got 14 funny cars, I'm burning the place to the ground. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just being honest. Like, and I think that it's getting increasingly expensive to run those cars. It seems to be, and I've looked at the car count fluctuation. It doesn't take very long. You can pull up dragracecentral.com, grab a piece of paper, and in an hour, you can go back to 1996 or 7 pretty easily and go see the car count in Top Fuel and Funny Car at the Gator Nationals and at Indy. Like, pick a couple of races that are going to be your benchmark. How many cars were at the Gator Nationals in 97? How many cars were at the US Nationals in 97? And do that for every year since then. And I've done it. And the trend is definitely down. Like, and it's not, and if you extrapolate it out or project it very long, I don't know that we're ever going to get back to 25 of them. I don't know that we're ever going to get back to 30 of them. I think that ship has sailed. And yet already you don't have to spend much time studying to recognize that while we and it's a talking point quite frequently, they actually asked Tony Schumacher a couple of weeks ago following his big win in New Hampshire. They said to him in the winner's circle something along the lines of, is this the most competitive era that has ever been in Top Fuel? And, people like to look back at yesteryear and the glory days of 30, 40 cars and all this. But I think there's a valid point to be made that it's quality over quantity, right? And I would say that there are more good Top Fuel cars and funny cars now than there have ever been, right? I 100% believe that. But I don't know how we get back to what feels healthy, where, you have a full blown deal of running. You have 16 touring pros or 18 touring pros, and then you have some guys that kind of fill in the gaps regionally and compete in different parts of the season. I think if they're looking at what can they grow and what can they build upon for the foreseeable future, I've said it a billion times, JT, Pro Modified is the universal language of our sport. It is the only successful class of drag racing, the only drag racing eliminator that is successfully contested around the world. I mean, not one car showing up for an exhibition. It is without question the future of drag racing. I think NHRA is actually way behind the curve on this. I think, what PDRA, as an example, has in terms of car count, what Midwest has in terms of car count and participation, I think is a great example of, you have the foundation is there. And if you could bring the pomp and circumstance, the television coverage, the sizzle, the fanfare,
sells more sponsors. I mean, like, it all just works hand in hand. They would have to beat beat pro mods off.
Oh, I mean, honestly, and it just goes back. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations on this show about the value of live TV. And I know that there are people that believe it's not what it once was. I think I'm one of those people, to be honest. But you cannot underestimate the power of broadcast television and the significance of being on Fox every weekend. You can say what you want about the show. You can say what you want about the material, how it's done, blah, 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 all those things. I get it. But you really can't. It's a difference maker, man. I mean, it is. I mean, look, what better example is there than the Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings? I mean, I think that almost, I won't say all of what that community has become, but a large majority of it is rooted in the fact that it gave racers an opportunity to get famous. Yeah, the money was
You
good
did.
in some instances, but you're never going to, I don't care how many $40,000 or $50,000 to win races you win, you're never going to pay for your drag racing. You're just not. Tom Bailey talked about that on the show last week. You're never going to be money ahead. You know, Ryan Martin may have.
He may have, yeah.
But that is built on the back, in my opinion, of the stardom that he achieved via television. You know, I mean, a lot of these teams are paying their bills selling merch, and that's on the back of a brand that was built on television. So I don't think you can downplay it. And if you gave all those door slammer racers the opportunity to go race and do what they're currently doing, race pro modified at a high level, and do it in front of millions of people on Fox or ESPN or whatever comes next, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, like you said, you'd be beating them off with a stick.
You would, because then they get more airtime, they get more interviews, just around the board. And
I honestly hope it happens.
Like, really get to see more of their character, because there's so many good characters down in pro mods. So
I think what they're going to have to, my prediction is that it does become a professional category at some point in the future. But what I think they're going to have to do is resist the urge to fuck it up. And, NHRA has a bit of a track record with having a great opportunity to do something spectacular and finding a way to bungle it. But I think
if you're running the NHRA, you'd be like, this is a good idea. Let's do it this weekend.
True.
I mean, you would.
But it's like, if you look at that deal, what they're going to have to do is resist the urge to grow too fast. It's like, hey, look, put these guys on TV, run them as part of your deal, but keep it at 10 or 12 races. Because what they'll do is they'll say, hey, can you come to 18 events? And you'll have that initial, the early adopters. This is a product lifecycle thing. You'll have all these people, the people that camp outside the store for the iPhone. You'd have that same thing. You'd have all these guys that have either been racing in the series or have been there a handful of times in the past. They're going to go all in, right? They're going to camp outside the store and wait for the phone to be released. They're going to go to all the races. They're going to do all those things. But then over the course of time, as the new wears off and all these different things, you're going to start to see it dwindle. So I think if they can be controlled with what they try to accomplish and do it slowly over the course of time, or 3 to 5 years, like, hey, 2025, we're going to do 10 races. We don't want to upset the apple cart. We want to, demonstrate that we can continue to do this and get this type of participation. And then in 2026, we're going to go to 12 races, and we're going to weave you into one, and then maybe in 27, we're going to do 12 races plus a couple of bonus races or something like that, because I don't want to see them exhaust this community the way we saw the immediate results that Pro Stock had when they reduced the number of races. Now they found a way to get back up there, right? They found a way to get back up to all those races. But
what the hell's that? Oh, it's cat. I thought it looked like a coon.
It's my cat. It's unbelievable. Like, literally, that's never happened. And I guess
it's probably after that bird that's on your shoulder.
Oh my God, shut up.
Wes got a tattoo, everybody.
Oh yeah, right. Anyway,
told your mom. She probably knows.
Yeah. What a deal, dude. Well, hey, I went longer than I wanted to there, but I do think that it's pro mod's the future. Write it down. It's I really do think. And this, Michael is saying that, but this generation is kind of fading from drag racing. Man, I think you're going to the wrong races. If you haven't watched Tom Gunner, Jimmy Dale's latest video from War in the Woods, go watch that. And I don't think that there is a person at that race that's over 40. Everybody there is young, except for the people with Jimmy Dale, right? Like, everybody else is like a teenager. And we're just not looking. I think that the youth in motorsports, or specifically in drag racing, they're not hanging out at NHRA races. There are some there, but like a lot of the youth that exists in this sport and a lot of the real excitement and enthusiasm that exists, it's happening at Streetcar Takeover. It's happening at these no prep shootouts, these 28-10-5 shootouts. It's happened at these garage races. It's happening in different places. When you go down to Big Jake's race at Extreme Raceway Park, everybody there's a young man or woman. It's unbelievable. Everybody's got music blaring. It's a totally different vibe than what you experience at an NHRA national event. Tell me kids aren't into cars. Look at Cletus McFarland's 3.5 million subscribers on YouTube. I mean, how many people has he personally introduced to drag racing? I mean, there's millions and millions. And I think that that's the thing, is like, I grew up, like, it was a big deal for me to go with my dad to the NHRA national event. That was like what we look forward to all year. I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore. I think that there's a lot of hardcore fans that follow the NHRA, and I certainly think they bring new faces to the sport, but it's kind of like the tried and true. The hot parts of our sport are on the fringe, man. I mean, I look at like World Series of Pro Mod, look at 12,000 some odd people showed up at Bradenton for the Pro Superstar Shootout. I mean, these independent productions that are more of a festival or more of a like cultural happening, a lifestyle event than they are a drag race is, I don't know. I think that that's where the action's at right now. And that's why I hope that NHRA Pro Mod, whatever happens in the future, whether it becomes part of
with the
Mission Series, it could,
because
but it's also,
characters,
I don't want to see him nuke our off season because it's important to have that off season. You know,
but those personalities in Pro Mod, because I mean, the no prep kings, the races you're talking about down in Texas and all this, there's tons of no prep stuff going on, the small tire stuff going on. I mean, these young guys, they've turned the camera around themselves. They've got a personality and they're following. Yeah, they're following all these guys online, and I mean Clay Milliken does a great job with it, and Alex and some other racers. But for the most part, a lot of those guys don't lean into it.
No,
but that's where the younger generation is right now. I mean, I hate to say it, but these young kids are freaking on YouTube all the time.
Oh, dude, constantly.
Drives
like
me
my daughter,
insane.
It is insane, man. But I also
Blake
think
in our green room got in the vehicle with me one time, and I didn't really hardly even know him, and we're going to Oklahoma, and he just throws a set of noise canceling Bose headphones on and is like, "Hey, man," and then gets his phone out and starts watching YouTube, and I like jerked him off like, "No, we ain't doing that."
Nope, we're not watching YouTube for
back
10 hours.
That's true, isn't it, Blake?
Yeah, no, 100%. We were. I'm trying to think of what I was even watching or listening to, but yeah, you looked over at me and was like, "Buddy, that ain't how this ride's gonna go." Like this.
Shit, what do you want me to do? Sit and talk to myself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long drive. That is true, but yeah,
I should have turned around and took you back home.
It's better than whenever JT rides with me because he gives me shit about I get on the phone when we get in the truck and I don't get off the phone until we are wherever we are. And all he's had to do is listen to half of my conversation for 10 hours or whatever.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. It's so great.
It's super
That's what I wish I had, those Bose noise canceling headphones and some YouTube. Like,
yeah,
those things come in handy, man, especially obviously at the racetrack. Not even at the racetrack, but like even at the hotel, if you're rooming with somebody snoring. Oh my gosh, dude.
Well, that's pretty frequently the case if you're running with drag racers. I'm yet to meet one that doesn't snore like a freight train. Jeez Louise, dude. It's like, it's unbelievable. But seriously, closing notes here. I saw a thing that Jeff Davis from YouTube said, they can be into cars, but if they can't afford them, it doesn't mean anything. And I certainly appreciate that because, I mean, that's the case for so many of us and so many people. And I recognize
you something to strive for, though.
But I do think that if you also take Pro Modified, it is, in my opinion, it's a very attainable thing. And that's part of what I think is important with some of these things as we move into the future is how can you keep the dream alive? Like, and I think that for a lot of people, the Top Fuel or the funny car dream, it's just so far beyond the reach of even the most accomplished or the most successful people. Whereas I do truly believe if like you're a small business owner or if you've got a good job and you've got a handful of friends that have a similar interest, you could probably find your way into Pro Modified racing. Are you going to run at the World Series of Pro Mod? Maybe not. Are you going to qualify in NHRA Pro Mod? Maybe not. But there are plenty of examples inside of Pro Modified of guys doing this on a relatively small budget with less than the latest and greatest equipment. A lot of these cars that find their way to the winner's circle are 10 years old, 15 years old. And I think that type of thing is important because where we're at with Top Fuel and Funny Cars specifically is if you don't have the latest, greatest stuff and have the resources to burn it to the ground every time, you're going to struggle to be competitive. And that's not necessarily the case in Pro Modified. So I do think that that's an important component of all this as well.
What's your take on that, Blake?
The Pro Mod stuff?
Yeah.
Right. No, I
just figured you were sitting there like, why did JT bring me on? Oh my God. Like, get me off here.
Yeah, this is the longest I've ever been on the show live.
Oh, no. Well, so I saw a couple of comments here. Is there any updates on John Force? As of nothing in the last 24 hours that I'm aware of. We've been reaching out to John Force Racing on a regular basis, as well as the NHRA, just trying to be respectful, but also stay in communication and keep our ear to the ground. And as soon as we have an update, we'll be sure to share it with our family, our Drag Illustrated family on dragillustrated.com, and of course across all of our social channels. But yeah, it's all of us are kind of waiting with bated breath to find out what happens next. Michael asks, will we ever see DI sponsored Pro Mod? Probably not, but you're going to see plenty of DI sponsored races. You're going to see plenty of DI sponsored drag world Pro Mod events. So we're just getting started when it comes to putting on events. I'm really proud of the progress we've made. If you've been following this story for very long, you know, we put on the first World Series of Pro Mod in Denver in 2017. We did it for 3 years out there, took a little time off, rebranded, tried some different things, but we rebirthed the World Series of Pro Mod at Bradenton Motorsports Park, which I see being its home for the foreseeable future, if not forever. And we've had 2 back-to-back fantastic years. We've been blessed by the good Lord with great weather. We've had a little wind and we've had a little wet, but we have managed to get it done and get it done relatively close to on time. And I think it's opened the door for some really exciting stuff in the future. Like, I've got some lofty goals for the World Series of Pro Mod. And like I said, if the NHRA were to adopt Pro Mod as a pro class, I think it would even it would actually bolster our position headed into 2025, because we've got some big shit that's about to happen, man. Big
shit
stuff.
popping.
Big shit popping. T.I. said it best, I think. Big thanks, popping. Hey, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Redline Synthetic Oils, Stroud Safety, Flow Racing, and, of course, Racers Club. I tell you, Michael, if you're going to see a Pro Mod sponsored by me, it's probably going to be in it. I'm probably going to be in it, but it's probably also going to be it's going to be Racers Club branded, man. I'm excited to see that brand continue to expand its foothold in the sport of drag racing. We have lofty goals for it as well, but I would love to see a Racers Club branded Pro Mod in the coming months, maybe yet this year. Maybe we'll have one at World Series of Pro Mod next year. I don't know if I want a dog in the fight, though.
I don't know. We just go
60
stickers on somebody's car.
Yeah. Hey, man, there was a bunch of people running them. Spencer Hyde's already running them. Lizzie Musey's already running them. Jeff Lutz is already running them. I think who else did I know has it on their car for sure? Anyways, there's a handful of them. We're making it. We're getting there, guys. So anyways, thank you all so much for joining us. JT, Mike, appreciate you guys. And all of you in the comments. Seriously.
Mike. Mike.
Did I say Mike? Yeah, sorry.
Good job, Mike.
Blake. Sorry, I meant Blake.
No,
you look
put me in the
nothing
middle.
like.
Yeah, I'll be more like
Yeah,
Mike.
There we go.
Mike,
And then I got to like
JT.
this.
Can you pull your hair? Can you pull your hair?
Pull your hair back. Get that forehead out.
Like,
Get that forehead. There you go. Close.
Yeah.
You're still
Yeah.
you're like 30% away from
Yeah.
from the amount of forehead that Mike's working with.
Yeah.
But seriously, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. This wouldn't be near as fun if we didn't have all of you participating in the conversation. That's what we want to do here. Like, I could certainly write up notes and ramble for 2 hours uninterrupted, but it makes it, and I kind of do that anyways, but it's a lot more fun having you guys pile into the comments and share your thoughts with us. Remember, if there's something you want to talk about, or you think that we should talk about, shoot us an email, wes@dragillustrated.com, at Wes Buck Show on all the social platforms, and we will see you next Wednesday right here on the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel. Hey, shout out, new show dropped this week. Blake produced, Blake, JT, Josh, a bunch of people at the team helped Kayla Zadell put together her brand new show, Reaction Time. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's available on our YouTube.
Awesome. The sport
Dude,
has
you
needed
guys
a
killed
show
it.
like this for a long time. Just
It's
a wrap
Sports
up
Center.
of everything.
Dude,
that's
I
going
gotta
on.
have
It
to say,
is.
Yeah,
I got
it is.
emotional watching it, like, because I'm going, this is what we exist for. Like, the reason
that
Drag
doesn't surprise
Illustrated
me
exists
a bit.
is the reason Drag Illustrated exists is shit like that. How cool is it that the Northeast Outlaw Pro Mods and Rocky Mountain Race Week are being talked about at the same time as John Force and Austin Prock, and like it's so important to have a high tide lifts all boats, guys. And I know throughout the course of time, it seems like everybody wants to like drill down on their niche, and I can make that case too. But what I want is people in drag racing to know that we are all drag racers, right? I don't care what class you're racing. We're all doing the same thing. We're all sharing a common passion, a common interest, and we can go a lot further if we go together. And ruling people out or not talking about certain types of racing because it's not as popular as others, it's just I'm not at all here for it. And whenever you guys cranked out that first episode of Reaction Time, I'm like, dude, I cannot wait to watch this show every
Kayla did
Monday
awesome
at
with it,
11
too.
a.m. Yeah,
I mean,
Kayla
she
killed
did.
it. The
Yeah,
graphics, it's all fantastic. So,
And then,
anyways, if
and
you
then
haven't
Monday
seen it,
nights
check it out.
or Mondays, we have both that, and then we have the racing business on at night with Jason Dukes.
And I think we're in season 3 or coming right up on season
Yeah,
3.
coming up there. Yep,
I was
yep.
thinking about-
And
yeah.
then tomorrow night, we will have Who You Got, which is me and Elon Warner and Rex Simmonmaker, and we just go over the new odds for the PlayNHRA and any other
Sports gambling.
Yep, sports gambling or betting or whatever
We
you want to
should,
do. But we kind of go over it, and we kind of kept track last week, man.
Of
Elon
picks.
was we just made some picks, and if we all started with 400, so we'll say chips or whatever, $400, then Elon would have won 609.47.
Hey.
And I would have won 295, and Rex would have lost 276. And poor Tyler Crossno, man, he was down 400. So,
Oh, that's hilarious.
I think
But you know what? And that's
sticking with his
something.
heart.
But real quick, why don't you? I think you are the best example. How much closer did you pay attention to the racing in Virginia because of the fact that you had bets placed?
Oh, I went ahead and broke down and bought NHRA.TV.
Right?
Because I hadn't had it for about a year. I just been catching up with the broadcaster online. So yeah.
No, isn't that fun? But it's amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
I
that's a
watched
perfect
Sunday,
example.
I didn't have a golf tournament or anything, and I found myself watching quite a bit of it. And then then you hate to walk away from the damn thing, because you've been sitting there for so long. You're like, well, this next class.
I know it's raining out
in
there.
no time. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And so then you got on your phone as you're walking to the shop.
I was
Oh,
trying to mow, and I was like, okay, I'm going to mow. But I'm like, well, I don't want, what if it stops raining? And I won't, it's just so funny, but it's like, whenever you get invested in it, that magic happens, man. We got to get
Well, it is,
people
and
invested.
and like with us, we know the people, so then you find yourself like, oh, I want to text them real quick.
Right.
That's the good thing.
Maybe
right?
you got to leave them alone. I don't know. They're probably busy.
Yeah, they might be busy. Hey, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday. Appreciate y'all.
Later.
You now.
Mike, you gonna say bye?
Yeah, let's just say bye. Wes has to pull out his uke. That's what he's gonna do the outro.
Oh, outro?
No
music.
No outro.
No
I can
outro?
do Mamba. Okay.
Are you kidding me? Can you play like something
What?
rocky? Can you play something like rock or? Ooh.
You're supposed to say la la bump, but I was hoping Blake.
I didn't know what the hell you were playing. Sorry.
No, I can't. There's the delay will play off.
Yeah, sorry. All right, love
Oh.
you guys.
All right. See ya.
You couldn't tell.